All right, we are going to continue to talk about the life of Daniel, and the song that we sang is perfect, absolutely perfect for what we are going to deal with this morning. So let's open up in prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we ask that you would focus our minds this morning, that, Lord, you would help us to hear your word, that, Lord, you would speak through me, that you would give me your holy anointing, that I would say only your words. Don't let me get in the way of your message. Lord, would you speak to each of our hearts? They testified yesterday that you are speaking. So, Lord, today we ask that you would give them the strength to walk in obedience to your words. So, Lord, we pray that in this time you would hollow it out, that you would bind the enemy, that, Lord, you would put a hedge of protection around this space and around those that are watching online, and that, Lord, you would speak to us in a way that we can obey. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. This morning, the title of my sermon is Daniel Conquered Fear. Daniel conquered fear. And the way he did it was by stepping up in the worst of situations. He conquered his fear. Last night when we talked about Daniel's life as a boy, and I told you I'm not going to reiterate that, so you're just going to have to pull it out of your memory bank, all right? But when he was in trouble, when he was in the worst of situations, Daniel did step up and God used him. And when he chose not to defile himself, when he chose to put his relationship with God as first and only priority, God not only blessed him, God protected him, and then God gave him such a pay raise, nobody else in the world had it, literally. Okay? So today we're going to go and pick up right where we left off. Now, when I prepare sermons, especially if it's going to be a series, I like to go down a mental list. I ask questions, and I go down a mental list for chronological answers. In thinking, the sermons that I've prepared are not, they're in chronological order, but they're not in thought process order. So this one should actually take place after Friday. My point to that is, today you need to apply this. But this is one that you're going to apply every day of your life, but you're going to need power to do it. And we'll talk about that one in the last week. But chronologically, for Daniel's life, we are going to be in Daniel chapter 2, verse 1. You remember, immediately after Daniel obeyed, God blessed him and his 3 friends with 10 times the amount of all knowledge and wisdom above everyone else in the country. And it was a big nation at the time, the largest kingdom of the world. And it didn't matter the age, they were 10 times better. God blessed them. And then immediately after that, we come to verse 1 of chapter 2, and it says, Now in the 2nd year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was so troubled that his sleep left him. So now God is going to put Daniel in a situation that he can step up and he can use what God has given him to bless his entire nation. Okay? And not only after that, it's going to bless him dramatically once he's obedient. But this is where God has now placed Daniel. All right? Now think about this. Nebuchadnezzar is the greatest king the world has ever known up until this point in our day. Okay? The Bible, which we will talk about in just a second, tells us, God tells Nebuchadnezzar, buddy, you are the king of kings. There's nobody like you. Now there will be a coming king, and his reign will be all over the earth, and he will reign for 1,000 years. It's going to be great and wonderful, and his name's Jesus. But that's not happened yet. Okay? And so Nebuchadnezzar is top, and God strikes Nebuchadnezzar where he's defenseless. He goes to sleep at night, and God takes the pillow and starts beating him with it. And Nebuchadnezzar has a bunch of dreams that scare him so badly that he can't even sleep at night. Okay? God is going to give Nebuchadnezzar something that he can't deal with. So he runs to all of his wise men, all of his advisors, of which Daniel, Mishael, Azariah, and Hananiah are all a part. The king doesn't know what to do, so he calls all of his magicians in the middle of the night and says, guys, wake up, we got to answer this problem. So in verses 2 through 9, the wise men say, okay, king, what is your problem? And he says, I've had a dream, and I need you to, it's scaring me, I need you to interpret it. They're like, okay, no problem, just tell us what the dream is. Nebuchadnezzar was a wise man. And he said, if I tell you what the dream is, you're going to make up a story. If you are really good, I don't have to tell you anything, and you're going to tell it all to me. You're going to tell me what the dream is, and you're going to tell me what it means. Well, verse 10, the Chaldeans and the wise men answered the king and said, there is not a man on earth who can tell the king's matter. Therefore, no king, lord, or ruler has ever asked such things of any magician, astrologer, or Chaldean. It is a difficult thing that the king requests, and there is no other who can tell it to the king except the gods whose dwelling is not with flesh. By the way, are the wise men right? Yes. There isn't a man on earth that can do what the king's asking them to do. The only one that can answer that, unfortunately, they thought it was the plural gods. They didn't realize it was the one God that gave Nebuchadnezzar the dream to begin with. So they're right. This is a hopeless situation for them. Here's the king's response. For this reason, the king was angry, very furious, and gave a command to destroy all of the wise men of Babylon. So the decree went out, and they began killing the wise men, and they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them. Daniel didn't do nothing. He hasn't even been called before the king. None of his friends have been called before the king. He's absolutely done nothing, and these other guys, because they're not godly, they can't answer. Everybody's looking to them for answers. They can't answer, and now they're all going to die for it? And remember, like I said yesterday, Nebuchadnezzar was not a king you wanted to cross. You didn't want your house to be a dung pile. You didn't want to be roasted over a spit like a pig. And you didn't want what happened to King Hezekiah or Zedekiah. That was really bad. You didn't want to cross this guy. And he gets so furious, he says, all right, kill them all. So systematically, now his soldiers are going house to house, and they're wiping out entire families. And the scripture tells us that they are now looking for Daniel and his friends to kill them. Verse 14. Then, with counsel and wisdom, Daniel answered Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. He answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, why is this decree from the king so urgent? In other words, what did you all do? Why'd you get so mad? Then Arioch made the decision known to Daniel. So Daniel went in and he asked the king to give him time that he might tell the king the interpretation. Verse 16 is really powerful. What are they seeking to do right now? They are systematically going house to house and killing whole families at a time. So what does Daniel do? They're looking for Daniel to kill him. Daniel stands up in front of the guy that's supposed to kill him and says, let me go talk to the king. And he goes to the very guy that wants him dead. You talk about putting your life in God's hands. He shows up to the guy that gave the order. Who knows if when he gets into the throne room, the king says, wait a minute, why is he still standing? Get rid of him. And who let him go? Get rid of him too. But Daniel puts his life in God's hands, and he goes and talks to the king himself. Verses 17 through 25, Daniel and his friends, they fast and pray that whole night. And God gives Daniel the dream and its interpretation. So the next morning, verse 26, Daniel comes before the king. The king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, that was the name that the king gave him, are you able to make known to me the dream which I have seen and its interpretation? Now think about this too. Remember, Daniel is your age. This is the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign. Now there's a few years that have actually passed between chapter 1 and chapter 2, but at most he's 15 to 20 years old. He is your age, and literally the lives of him, his friends, and all of the wise men and their families is on the line if you get it wrong. Not a comfortable situation. What do you think, huh? Verse 27. So Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, the secret which the king has demanded, the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, and the soothsayers cannot declare to the king. Uh-oh. King, they were right. I can't do it. But he doesn't end there, because God wanted to use Daniel. He says, but there is a king in heaven who reveals secrets, and he has made known to the king Nebuchadnezzar that what will be in latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head upon your bed were these. As for you, O king, thoughts came to your mind while you were on your bed about what would come to pass after this, and he who reveals secrets has made known to you what will be. But as for me, this secret has not been revealed to me, because I have more wisdom than anyone living. But for our sakes, who make known the interpretation to the king, so that you may know the thoughts of your heart. Verse 31. I'll put that in, apologize, put it in the wrong order on my notes. Verse 31, he says, you, O king, were watching, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. This image's head was of fine gold, and its chest were arms of silver, and its bellies and thighs of bronze. From verses 33 through 43, Daniel describes this beautiful, amazing statue, probably similar to what King Nebuchadnezzar would later, in a couple chapters, build for himself to have everybody worship because of his pride. But I do want you to catch verse 37 and 38. He says, you, O king, are king of kings. Buddy, you're the top. You're number one. You're the best that there's ever going to be up until this point. For you are king of kings, for the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory. And wherever the children of men dwell, or the beasts of the field, notice he says the beasts of the field, because that will come into play tomorrow, and the birds of the heaven, he has given them into your hand, and he's made you ruler over them all. You are this head of gold. God tells King Nebuchadnezzar, you are the greatest, but there is a stone that's coming that's going to knock down your kingdom and all other kingdoms, and he's going to rule. He's going to be the greatest of all. He's going to cover the entire earth. It's going to be powerful. But notice, God gives King Nebuchadnezzar a warning. Who is the one that gave Nebuchadnezzar his kingdom, his power, his strength, and his glory? God did. Daniel in his interpretation says, Nebi, listen, buddy, you're tops, you're number one, but there's one that gave it to you. Don't miss him. Now this is going to come into play really bad tomorrow, because God is going to take Nebuchadnezzar's pride, stomp it in the ground into dust, and completely have to reform the man. All right, now let's skip down to verse 43. Verse 43. And as you saw iron mixed with clay, with ceramic clay, that was the feet at the very end, they will mingle with all the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall break into pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Inasmuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and it broke it into pieces of iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king that which will come to pass after this dream. This dream is certain, and its interpretation is sure. He tells him what the dream was. Then he gives him in the interpretation. And the interpretation was a prophecy that is still holding true to our day today. Some 2,500 years later. That's a pretty good prophecy. By the way, you look through all religions and all histories and all of their holy texts, You don't find prophecies like what you find in the Bible. They are accurate. Now, all of that to be said, I want to just leave a little tidbit for us older ones here. I love little tidbits that make me question. I am a person that takes the Bible very, very seriously. I truly believe that every word, every letter, even the punctuation, God, by the Holy Spirit, put it there on purpose. And so its wording is very important, and we need to be careful with it. I want you to notice verse 43. And I want to be kind of, if you want to give it an image, I want to be like the sample person at Costco that stands there with the little pieces of cheesecake, Gives you just enough of a taste that you're like, that's good, I want to buy it. All right, so I want this to be just a little bit of cheesecake, and if you like it, maybe you'll do a search for it, because it's a wonderful, powerful search. All right, verse 43, notice it says, as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not hear to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. I've always taken that as just the nations of the world. They don't ever mix. They don't ever come together right. But that's not what this passage says. In the Bible, there is what they call scriptural consistency. And the idea is if they use something for an image in one place, all throughout the Bible they use it as that image. One of them is leaven. Leaven always talks about sin as an image, but it also more specifically talks about pride. This one, for us adults in here, from Romans chapter 9, Isaiah 29, Isaiah 45, Isaiah 64, and Jeremiah 18, what's the image of the clay throughout the Bible? What does it represent? Please say it out loud. Could be. In all of those passages, the clay is referred to us. It says, you are the potter, we are the clay. So from this passage, we know that as you see the iron mixed with clay, the clay is humanity. It's us. It's you and me. But notice that next little comma. God put that in there for a reason. It says, they will mingle with the seed of men. The seed of men literally means their children, their posterity, their children, their grandchildren, humanity's seed. So then who's the iron that doesn't mix with them? Because they're obviously different. If they weren't different, they'd mix. But they are something that's completely opposed. And I'm not going to go any further into that. I want you all to just, the Bible's very specific there. What does that mean? All right, I'll go further. Last four verses. Verse 46, then King Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face, prostrate, literally with his face on the ground before Daniel, and commanded that they should present and offer incense to Daniel. This is the greatest king on earth. He gets the message. He really sees who God is because Daniel was obedient, and now he's on his face before Daniel. The king answered Daniel and said, truly, your God is the God of gods, the Lord of kings, and the revealer of secrets, since you could reveal this secret. Then the king promoted Daniel and gave him many great gifts, and he made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon. The chief administrators over the wise men of Babylon, like we talked about yesterday, when the 3 wise men showed up, they showed up because Daniel taught them years in advance that there was coming another king. Verse 49, also Daniel petitioned the king and set Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon, but Daniel sat at the gate of the king. And literally he was at the king's right hand. Think about this. Daniel has only been a slave. He has been a carted off slave for a matter of a couple years. And now he's sitting next to the king. Every decision the king makes, Daniel hears. Every decision that the king needs wisdom on, Daniel interferes. This is just a couple years. He's your age. And he's now second-ish in command over the entire world. Every word that came out of his mouth went right in the king's ears. Why? He shouldn't have been alive. Daniel should have died with all the other wise men and astrologers and magicians. But when his life was in danger, when he was in a bad way, he stepped up anyway and trusted God to take care of him. Daniel conquered his fears by stepping up. It's really easy to detach from Bible stories that we read. But I really want you to experience putting yourself in Daniel's place. Daniel's life was on the line. If someone came in this room and started systematically shooting everyone here, what would you do? How would you handle it? That's what Daniel did. Daniel stepped up in front of the bullet and says, "Take me to the boss. We'll talk this out." Would you do that? You see, Daniel, he could have just, what can I do? I mean, none of the other wise men, none of the other old people of the nation that's supposed to know this, they don't get it. How could I? What if I go before the king and he's like, boom. Why not just accept your fate? Why not just, whatever. I can't get out of this. I'm just a little guy. I'm just young. He didn't. He stepped up and trusted that God would take care of him. I promise you, you can ask every single adult that has been faithful to the Lord in your life, you can ask them when they put their life on the line for God's sake, that God never let them down ever once. He's faithful. It doesn't matter the amount of the bill. It doesn't matter the danger of life. He's faithful. And Daniel knew it. What if God didn't give Daniel the answer? I mean, let's face it. How many times have you prayed and you're like, "Lord, I know you answer for other people, and I could really use an answer right now, but are you going to answer for me?" Daniel knew that he would. He didn't have to step up, but he did. Fearing for his life and the life of his friends, Daniel went to his only source of safety. Instead of cowering in fear, Daniel stepped up, and this was the pattern of Daniel's life. Some 70 years-ish later, Daniel had to face this again. A decree went out through trickery that if they prayed to any other god other than the king, they would be put to death. But Daniel did his normal life, went and prayed 3 times a day before the open window facing Jerusalem, and just trusted that God would take care of him. Even as he's going and being thrown into the lion's den, God took care of Daniel because he stepped up. And God got glory from Daniel stepping up. Amen. It wasn't that the lions weren't hungry. The Bible tells us that once they threw the bad guys in that were trying to face Daniel, they were literally devoured before they even touched the ground. Those lions, boy, I guess. Have you ever been like hovering around the dining hall right before lunch and you begin to smell those wafts of food, and it only encourages your meals? And so then once you actually get there, you're really hungry and you eat well? I think all night long those lions are smelling Daniel flesh, and they're like, "Boy, I'd love to take a bite of that." "Boy, he smells delicious." And the whole night, God's saying, "Oh, no, you wait your turn. If you eat tonight, you're only going to get one. But if you eat tomorrow morning, boy, you're going to get a feast." Daniel stepped up. He made it a pattern of his life that when he was in a bad way, he stepped up and trusted God to come through. He didn't have what fear man could do to him, but he sure feared the one that could really deal with his body and then his soul. And that's how Daniel lived. God came through with miracles all through Daniel's life. He shut the angry lions' mouths, and he always shut those that were against him, those that tried to kill him. Daniel did have fear, though. All of us have fear. Every single one of us have been put in situations and will be put in situations in our life where we have no control over the situation. And in that time, our bodies have fear. Now, there's 2 different types of fear. There is a godly fear. You think that little fish is scared of that shark? I dare say he is. God gives us fear and planted fear within us for good. It's healthy. It's temporary. Okay? Go ahead. It's temporary. God gives us fear so that when you are in a current amount of danger, you are warned ahead of time. In those times when you have fear, it's good to ask, am I doing something foolish? I remember I was driving from, it was either here or KBC, I guess it was KBC, going home to Michigan. And I'm driving in the winter, driving through Cincinnati. And I've got a pickup truck and the back end's really light. And all of us are driving about 35, 40 miles an hour. There were some slick spots, but nothing big. And all of a sudden, I'm in the middle lane. There's people all around me. And the tail end of my vehicle just turns around. And I'm facing the exact 180-degree opposite direction. And there's right next to me, I will never forget their face. There's a mother in a dark, I don't remember the color, colorblind. But it was a dark van. The mother was driving, and there was a little girl sitting in the seat, and in that instant, I knew I was going to kill them both. I'll never forget that mother's face. She was completely helpless. She was terrified. She knew that they were going to hit me. There was no other way. I was within 10 feet, and I was facing the exact opposite direction. We're going 40 miles an hour. I had nothing I could do, and all I did was said, God help. That's all I had time to say. And instead of continuing to turn, I turned 180 degrees, and when I said, God help, my vehicle stopped turning and slid into a snowbank on the side. My vehicle didn't even get a scratch. Hers didn't either. It was God's hand. This is the only way I had no other recourse. There was nothing else I could do in that short amount of time. If I'd have continued to turn even just a little bit, I'd have smashed them both. But God's hand was on me. God's fear that He gives us is healthy. It is for our good for that moment to say, hey, are you doing something you shouldn't be? Stop now. Or maybe you're in danger, you need to move. My granddad, he always used to say, and I remember him saying it, it's a poor set of legs to let a man get beat. In other words, if you're going to get beat, run. And if your legs can't carry you, you need to do something about your legs. Fear comes, it's a good thing. There's no sense in you getting beat, run off. Our fear kicks in, the adrenaline starts pumping, your head clears, time slows down, your eyes focus. Everything is preparing you for the immediate danger that you're in. But it's temporary. God's fear, the healthy fear, is for our good. It's to protect us. It is to keep us safe. And it makes you look for an exit. What does the Bible say? Every man is tempted in the same ways. But with the temptations, God makes what? A way of escape that we may be able to bear it. When God puts His fear on us because of immediate danger, we start looking for the exit He's made. Poor set of legs, let a man get beat. But there's a different fear. And this is the fear we're going to talk about the rest of the time. And this is the fear of evil. And this is the fear that Satan brings and his spirits bring. It is a fear that is constant or repetitive. It is one that you have it all of the time, or it comes at you like waves of the sea. And you'll be hit with it, and then it'll go away for a while, and then it'll hit you again, and it'll hit you again. This fear is dramatically different. It's completely opposed to godly fear. It is one that instead of trying to help you find a way of escape, it makes you feel like you're trapped and can't get away from it. It is for your destruction. It beats on your mind, and it beats on your mind, it beats on your mind until physically your body is beat too. And there are literally people that are destroyed because after their mind is destroyed from fear, their bodies are. These fears keep us tormented. Always looking over our shoulders, always fearing what might come next, always stopping us from doing what we ought. our fears, these evil fears, instead of rescuing us from the danger, they often trap us. Daniel Defoe, he wrote the book Robinson Crusoe for any of you that are in English class. And he said this, thus fear of danger is 10,000 times more terrifying than the danger itself, when apparent to the eyes. And we find the burden of anxiety greater by much than the evil which we are anxious about. What he's saying is, our fear makes our imagination run wild. We picture in our mind what we're picturing is way worse than the actual problem. The shadows of night, they look spooky, but it's because they're distorted because there's no light. I knew a lady at my first church. She was absolutely terrified because she knew that there were people in her house at night when she's sleeping. She even recorded it with a camcorder. And she brought it to church and said, look at this, you can see them. Any normal person would say, no, that's the shadow of the refrigerator. That's the shadow of the tree outside shining through the window. Any normal person could see that. But she had been so trapped by these evil fears for so long that she couldn't get away. It destroyed her. She ended up on medication because of it. The other thing that Daniel Defoe says here is, the heavy weight that we carry thinking about our problem is much heavier than the actual problem. Tell me about it. You ever had that big exam coming up? Or at least a revival that you had to do for a week and it's over your shoulders and you're worried about it and you're constantly, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then you get there and you realize, oh, the weight has been lifted because now you're there. The weight that you carry is much worse than the actual problem. Our fears are made to trap us, our evil fears. So what are our fears? I just went down a list of people's greatest fears. There's the fear of failure. It's not the faith that He is able to keep me and sustain me and give me a way of escape. The fear of failure. The fear of rejection. The fear of people and public speaking. I don't have a problem with public speaking. It doesn't scare me one bit. But you know what does scare me? The next one. The fear of private speaking. I absolutely, and this is at 41 years old, okay? When I go to talk to someone one-on-one that I've never met before and I don't know, I will get so scared I will shake. I don't know why. I can speak to a whole crowd and it doesn't bother me. But I go to one-on-one? How about fear of losing control? The fear of the unknown. The fear of pain. I'm a big guy, okay? Not just this way, okay? I'm a big guy. There's not very many things that actually scare me of physical things. I can hold my own until I have to go in each year to get my blood drawn by a nurse so they can check to see if my blood pressure medicine's still working or putting me in danger. And at 41 years old, God is my witness, they go to take my arm and I'm going like this. Because if I look at this, I go, ah! I don't know why. I mean, it's just a little prick. I know that it is. I feel it even though I'm looking away, but I can't do it. How about the fear of death? Lots of people are scared of that one. There was a boy that he asked his dad, why did you become a pilot? And his dad, as they're in the cockpit and flying over the land, he says, well, he said, I wanted to conquer my greatest fear. And the boy said, oh, your fear of flying? And his dad said, no, my fear of dying alone. We have fears of heights. We have fears of flying, perhaps. People finding out who we really are. Fear of animals. Do you know what the fear of snakes is called? Common sense. I'd never be a good snake handling pastor. Because the minute they pull out those boxes and open those boxes up, I'm preaching somewhere else. Titus Smith was in my class. We graduated together. Him and his uncle was also named Titus. They were big old boys, both of them. They're both in glory now. They're both serving the Lord and Lord took them. But they were big guys. They would take up that door. And they went to a revival service down in Harlan County one time, and they're sitting on the back pew. And they said everything was going normal with the worship service until all of a sudden everybody started ducking their heads. Well, this is kind of odd. And then they started to pull out the boxes, and then they started lifting up the snakes. And Titus Boggs, who was my age, looked at his uncle, who was about 15, 20 years older, and says, "Where's the door?" And his uncle proceeded to say, "Where do you want one?" He said they left and never went back. You know, some of you saw me last year or 2 years ago up there in the roof over there in the ad building. That's a really steep roof. It was really hard sometimes when we were up there to keep our footing. I have absolutely no fear of how high I go. What I have fear of is the sudden stop and the quick descent getting down there. That's what scares me. So I do what I can to prevent that from happening. I don't really want to go splat. Some people can't get on the roof. We all have fears. How about this one? The fear of God. Scripture says it's the beginning of wisdom. Proverbs chapter 9, verse 10 it says the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. In Matthew chapter 10, verse 28, Jesus said, "And do not fear those who kill the body, but can kill the soul. But rather fear him," capital H, "who is able to destroy both the soul and body in hell," Gehenna. Fear is Satan's carte blanche on your life. Do you know what a carte blanche is? It's French. Okay? Carte means document. Blanche means blank. If you have a blank document given to you by the president, you know what that means? You can do whatever you want and he's going to back you up. He would say, "I give this person permission to do," and underline it and not sign it in and then sign his name to it. As a believer, as a Christian, Satan has no authority over your lives, not 1 ounce. Amen. Christ paid for you to be free. I told you were spitting, Earl, sorry. Christ paid for you all to be free. And you can live that way unless you give him the authority to do what he wants. Wouldn't it be great if any of you in here were to write me a check for $1? I would like that. That's nice. My name is Dan Miller, spelled DANMILLER. But you know what would be better than signing a check for $1? Is if you write in there to the pay order of Dan Miller, and then you sign it at the bottom, and then in that little middle section you don't put anything at all. You know why? Because then I can write whatever I want. When you allow Satan's fear to trap you, you hand him the check. And you say, you write the amount. And you don't go anywhere. You hide in a corner. You stand there white-knuckled, as they used to say it on the pews, because you can't leave. Don't allow Satan to have rule over your life. Jesus paid for you to have more than that. It's a terrible place to be when you're in the storm and you hand the storm or the boat's reins over to Satan. God says, if you're in the boat, well, you can do what? And that song says, with Jesus in the boat, you can smile in the storm. But you know what you can't do? If Jesus is in the boat and you tell Jesus to get out of the way and have Satan start the keel, there's no smiling in that storm. You cannot allow Satan's fears and anxieties to trap you from doing what God would have you to do. Daniel was in danger, certainly. But he did not allow that fear of danger, even for his very life, to prevent him from stepping up to do what he ought to do. If you say, I can't, because of whatever, you're right. You never will. Because you have allowed Satan to have all authority to do whatever you want, whatever he wants. When you accept Satan's fear, you're allowing him to handcuff you. Now, these are not handcuffs. Charlie and I got busy talking yesterday, and I forgot to go buy some. Let me see your hands. All right, put them together. Now, imagine those to be handcuffs. Hold them up real high for me. If you allow Satan to trap you with your fears, don't get out of them. They're handcuffs, remember? The only way to get out of handcuffs is with a key. Don't allow Satan to handcuff you. Only God knows your potential when you walk in faith. Satan doesn't know it. And so what he does is he traps you in fear because he's scared of what you might become when you're obedient to him, when you're obedient to God. God did not give you a spirit of fear. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. For God has not given you a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of sound mind. God's desire is that you are not trapped by your fears. When we realize that all things work together for good to them that love God and are called according to his purpose, there is a hedge of protection like he put around Job that Satan can't reach through. He doesn't have the authority. You get to shoot him on sight. But this is fear is much more serious than we often realize. And we read a verse like that and we kind of take it gradually. But notice specifically what it says. Fear is not just a feeling. It's a spirit. The Bible tells us there's many evil spirits in the Bible. There's the spirit of divination, the familiar spirit, the spirit of jealousy, lying spirit, perverse spirit, spirit of haughtiness, spirit of heaviness, spirit of whoredom, spirit of infirmity, deaf and dumb spirits, spirit of bondage, spirit of fear, seducing spirits, spirits of the Antichrist, spirit of error, spirit of poverty, spirit of death. One of those spirits is fear. What you don't realize when you allow your fears to trap you is you are allowing Satan's minions to come and haunt your soul. This is much more serious than you give it credit. What's the opposite, according to the Bible, what's the opposite of fear? And my son says it because he knows I've already preached this for him. The opposite of fear is actually love. 1 John chapter 4, verse 17. Love has been perfected among us in this, that we may have boldness in the day of judgment, because as he is, so we are in the world. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves torment. But he who fears has been made perfect in love. We love him because he first loved us. The reason you are allowing Satan to trap you by fear is because you don't realize the love of God that he has for you. He first loves you. And because you don't realize how much he loves you, you're worried what Satan can do to you. He's helpless. He has no authority in your life. Amen. So here's where you're going to keep notes, all right? 8 points. Very simple. This is how to conquer fear. This is our close. When you are afraid, at first, you ask yourself, is this godly fear or is this evil, sinful fear? Is it temporary or is this an extended thing? Does this come up every time I'm in an altar call service? Does this come up every time the teacher looks at my papers? Is it temporary or is it continual? Defining it takes a split second. It'll tell you, all right, you need to stop what you're doing because you're going to get hurt, duh. Or it will say, wait a minute, Satan's trying to trap me here and hold me back from what God wants me to do. Hold on. I see that this is Satan. He's trying to put me in a box. I can't let him do it. Number 2, allow your fear to make you be your best. I am not a good carpenter, but I make custom cabinets. Custom cabinets have to be perfect. You can't have big old gaps in it. Nobody likes your counter or your cupboards when you can look through them. I don't know why. You got to be perfect. You know what terrifies me? Making cuts that leave holes. So you know what I do? I say, all right, fear, I see what you're doing, but you're not going to trap me. I'm going to step up and I'm going to do my very best in this situation. And you know what? Because of that, I can make some pretty good looking cabinets. Yes. Make sure your fear is used for your benefit. Number 3, trust as a believer that everything you face is Father filtered. In other words, God is not going to bring you to something that He can't bring you through something. He's not going to bring you to something just to destroy you. He's not going to tell me to go up and work on that roof over there just to have me fall off and squish on the pavement. Everything that you face, God promises to bring you through. So fear, you can't trap me because God is going to take me through this. Number 4. Realize that Satan is trying to make you afraid because he is afraid of your potential. You realize that Satan is trapped by fear? Can you imagine? You rebel against the God of the universe, the one that created you, and you're trying to fight against him? He knows his ultimate end. He knows he's already a defeated foe. He knows that he has no power over you. And so every time you do something that you ought to, he's terrified of what the end result might be. He doesn't know the future. And so he's got to do his best to handcuff you from doing what you ought to. Because if he doesn't, there ain't no telling what those hands might do. I can't tell you how bad, how many times Satan, sitting over in those pews over there, tried to trap me from doing what God wanted me to do. To getting it settled up here. He told me over and over again, oh, they're going to look at you like a fool. They're going to laugh at you. Your friends don't understand. All kinds of things. You know why? Because he would be scared of what I'm doing right now. 20 years later. Number 5. This works for people too. And this is more of a personal thing than a spiritual one. But people will put labels on you and they will tell you negative things more often than not because they are scared of what you might do when you obey God. As a boy, they told me I had attention deficit disorder. And all that really meant, I did. They gave me medication and it really helped. But all it really did was just put a label on me and I was like, well, since I've got this, I don't have to push through. But then I came to Mount Carmel where it was going to be very difficult to get the medication that I needed to solve the problem. And so you know what I decided to do? Well, it's time to go cold turkey. And please don't ask the faculty that are here how bad I did my first 2 years here. By my senior year, I was making A's and B's. But now when I got here, I had to fight through it. Don't allow people's fear of your potential to hold you back from being obedient to God. What a terrible way to live. Oh, I don't think he can do that. Well, I guess you're right. If you really believed that, you'd never do anything in life. You'd never get out of bed. I heard that. Number 6. If you can't walk through completely, take baby steps to get you through your fear. If you can't, if you're like, I am just so scared I cannot move, don't stay there. Move what you can. Take one little baby step. And then take another little baby step. Don't stop. Don't slow down. Push through the fear. I have a real prime example of this. When I was Daniel's age, around 12, around your age, I could not get on the second step of a standing ladder. Couldn't get on the second step. I would literally shake that ladder. I was so scared that I'd fall. Who knows why? It's unsensible, I know, but I would climb trees. But I couldn't get up that high on a step. I remember one time specifically, I climbed up in a tree, and I got there, and I was sitting there, and I was only about 6 or 8 feet off the ground, something like that. It was where my feet were. And I realized, oh no, I might fall. And so I stayed there, and I stayed there, and I stayed there for a long time until I finally saw someone like my dad, and he was over at my grandparents' house, and he was way off in the distance, and I yelled, "Dad, Dad!" So he came over, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" He saw me sitting there. I was like, "I can't get down." He looked up at me and he says, "Dan, you got up there. You can get down." I was terrified. I was selling Kirby vacuum cleaners. I was a door-to-door salesman. I had a $3,000 vacuum that I had to go and sell to people in their homes so I could eat. It was a terrible job. It was awful. I hated it. I told you, I don't like meeting people one-on-one. I'd bring up this vacuum and I'd be like this, "Can I come show you about a Kirby vacuum cleaner?" It's not very good for a salesman. I told God, I said, "God, I don't care what you have me do. Have me do anything, but help me find another job." So I started looking in the newspaper, which people used to do, and they had a classified section. And the first one on the list, you know what it was? To be a roofer. I couldn't get 2 steps on a ladder. I saw it and I laughed and I said, "God, that's really funny. That ain't happening." And then God said to me, "Wait a minute. You told me you'd do anything." Okay, well, Lord, I really didn't mean it. And he says, "No, if you want another job, right there it is." So I went in there and I asked him, and I told him up front, I said, "Listen, I'm scared to death of heights. I can't do it. But I'm here because I need another job." And the guy was like, "I don't know what to do with that." He said, "I'll put you on a flat roof crew." Well, the problem is the flat roof is, even though it's flat or relatively close, you can walk on it really easy, pretty safe, you still got to get up there. So the first job I go and do is over here in Berea, Kentucky, and it was on one of those old buildings from the 1800s, you know, you see in the westerns, has the parapet walls down the sides, brick, 2 stories up. And I'm getting on the ladder, and I get to about where my feet are this high off the ground. And my body is shaking so bad, I'm shaking the ladder. And I said, "God, I can't do this. But you called me to this. And so what I need you to do for me is I need you to get rid of my fear." And you know what he did? He didn't. He didn't answer my prayer. But you know what he did do? He said, "Dan, get up there." And so one rung at a time, shaking the ladder as I went, God is my witness, I made it to that top. And I put my feet on that flat roof. And it was gone. Literally by the end of that week, I was, this is no exaggeration, 2 stories up. I was hanging by a leg and an arm, nailing in nails as far as I could reach, looking over the edge. OSHA would have had a fit. But you know what? God conquered my fear. If you can't walk, don't stop. Take steps to get through. Last one, number 7. Pray through it. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, make your requests known to God. Pray through it. God, I am absolutely trapped. Help me now. And He will. If He's taken you and brought you to this point of fear, by the way, you're supposed to still be wearing these. I didn't say you could take these off. These are handcuffs.
My hands are purple.
Good. They're supposed to be. The handcuffs are supposed to be tight. Yeah, you'll go to jail that way. All right. By everything through prayer and supplication, make your request known to God. If you need to get through your fear, if you need to get handcuffs off, what's the number one thing you need? You need the key. You know what breaking your fear, you know what the key to breaking your fear that Satan brings you is? Your prayers. God loves you. He brings you to something so he can bring you through something and grow you. Do not allow Satan to trap your fears. All right, you can take them off now. I'll tell you. Number 8, last one. Be released. Trust that God is going to release you from this fear. And because that's the case, you start walking. If you can trust God that he can bring you through your fear, whatever it is, and all of us have them, you keep walking. You keep taking steps. Daniel, go to the last slide for me. This is a prayer of release. Like I said, fear is not just simply an emotion. Okay? This prayer has no power in it whatsoever, but it's the heart of the one that prays it. All right? There's nothing special in what I wrote there in the screen. But it's your cry out to God that he would release you from this spirit of fear. Fear, again, it is a spirit. It is that we have allowed Satan to trap us, to hold us in place from doing what God wants us to do. And we have allowed that spirit, that evil spirit, to hover over our soul and to hold us back from having all of God's potential. So this is a prayer of release. Would you all stand with me? I want us to read it together, please. Lord Jesus, you have paid for my peace with your suffering and death. I have been trapped by fear. Forgive me for not trusting you completely. Today, I'm placing my complete trust in you. Fill me with your perfect love. Release me from this bondage. Give me your peace that passes all understanding, and help me walk in courage. Would you bow your heads with me, please? Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. It really does mean the world to me that you're getting a blessing out of it. If this video was a blessing, make sure to hit that thumbs up button for me. That way other people can find it as well. Here in the link section, you'll find playlists and new videos that we put out. We try to do 2 or 3 a week. You can also subscribe to the channel by pressing on my face and then hitting the bell icon, and that will alert you to new videos. May God richly bless you.